It is the ether which conveys waves in the fraction of a second to the antipodes. And it is that which brings us information from the stars, from the most distant nebulae, which otherwise we should be without. The ether is the seat of all radiation energy, and of most other energy, whether it be in the form of light or other waves.
If telepathy is real, I said, then my mind is not my own. I'm just a radio receiving set, which picks up the thoughts of all the other creatures of this universe. What is myself, anyway? Body or mind?
I see it. I see it. I see it.
An experiment in thought reading in which every listener will be invited to assist.
Evening Post, Nottingham 5NG, Wednesday 28th October, 10:30 p.m. Mass telepathy. An experiment in thought reading in which all will be invited to take part. This is from London SB to all relay stations. The postponed mass telepathy experiment in which Sir Arthur Conan Doyle will take part.
Telepathy soon may be added to radio, telephone, and telegraph as a means of communication with distant persons. Notable progress has been reported by Professor Vladimir Neveterev of Leningrad Academy of Sciences, Russia, who, by capturing the electronic waves thrown off by people, claims to have succeeded in transmitting thoughts.
The telephone is helpless when the ice is on the wires. The telegraph is also quite a new tool. And when a bunch of static lies concealed around the attic, the radio's erratic, even futile. The mails are often slower than a busy man desires. Express delays and lingers for unloading. And messengers who carry correspondence like to tarry in a manner that is very discommoding.
Prepare yourself for a brand new idea in radio entertainment.
So much has been accomplished during the past few years in the transmission of sound and of sight in the fields of radio and television that it is within the bounds of possibility that waves of a similar character, of which at present we know nothing, may also possibly be transmitted through space.
Tonight's telepathy, interesting experiment that Nottingham will hear. Among those who will take part in the mass telepathy to be broadcast tonight from 10:15 to 10:45, a Lady Gainford, Miss
Zena Dare,
will be heard at
the Honourable Mrs. Maurice Brett, Miss Phyllis Twigg, Miss Dorothy Warren, Commander Kenworthy, Mr. James Agate.
Curiosity and the desire to learn are common and commendable characteristics. But there is far too much of the come and listen to my wireless set atmosphere about it. And you'll sing merrily. The interest is distracted by all this paraphernalia and by the tuning preliminaries which ensue. Another objectionable habit is to refer to the listener as the listener-in. This is a relic of the days when he actually did listen in to messages not primarily intended for him. Now he is the one addressed, and he accordingly listens. Only the unlicensed listen in.
If man's mind, your mind, possesses mental powers heretofore not recognized, what subject can be more interesting and possibly in some way more useful to you in your daily life? The bands of frequencies on the spectrum which precede and follow those of light are greater than the combined total of all the bands we know and use today. Yet, they are comparatively unexplored. What they offer, what they may hold, no man today knows.
In our present stage of knowledge, it cannot be said that telepathy as such has any foundation in scientific fact, but it is well to remember that one of the greatest of men has said, "There is more in heaven and earth than is
Zenith's policy of again a year ahead, the Zenith Foundation brings to the air and to millions of listeners a half-hour radio program that is a year ahead and even more. A program so different, so startling, so interesting that it will become a regular habit with people all over the country. On these programs, the listeners will be taken where no living person has ever been. In addition, the audience will participate in the exploration of a field that plays a part in their daily lives, but which has heretofore remained closed to the average public. For this reason, we ask you to listen in right from the start of the series. Don't miss the preliminaries, which will better acquaint you with what is to be done and which help you to enter into this exploration in the proper frame of mind.
Telepathy, however, is a far more certain thing. It needs no complicated apparatus. It doesn't call for riches to invest in tubes and switches, and it works with neither hitches nor hiatus. You simply give your absent friend a sort of mental ring and think of, say, the $5 that he owes you. Next day, as plain as print, he shows by actions cold and flinty that he got your little hint. He hardly knows you.
The mechanic of the Harvard Psychological Laboratory worked out for me a very suitable instrument which would choose any number from 1 to 1,000. It was constructed like a triple roulette wheel, each wheel bearing digits from 0 to 9, being automatically thrown into rapid rotation and automatically stopped, so as to enable us to read off the 3 digits. In the cases of materials to be used over the radio, long lists were prepared, each item being numbered or given a series of numbers.
I am afraid we must avoid doing anything which will justifiably expose us to an attack by the medical profession and other students of the mental and nervous systems. A test of this character with an unknown number of persons listening, would carry little weight and could not in any case be convincing. The company would be exposed to a deal of criticism, some of which might be quite justifiable. From London Executive to Mr. Lewis, Mass Telepathy. My understanding of this stunt is that you are to be the host at a little dinner party of choice spirits in the Savoy Hotel that evening at, say, 8:30 p.m. The guests to be well-known people. At 10:30, the announcer in the studio will ask listeners to think of the following definite things, i.e. a colour, a card, a number, a popular tune, a well-known book, a BBC station. After a certain intermission, which will be filled by some music, you and your guests will come over from the Savoy Hotel, and the announcer will ask each of you in turn what you have thought of for each of the tests. I offer this as an outline, which I should like to talk over with you and perfect before carrying through to completion. If there are any points in this memorandum which are unclear, I shall be glad to discuss them with you personally.
The announcer in the London studio will put into the minds of listeners 6 items. The general classification of 5 of these will be in the possession of the cast, i.e. a card, a number, a colour, etc. The 6th item will be entirely unknown to any member of the jury. The announcer in the studio, having outlined the general lines on which the scheme is being conducted, will invite listeners to think of the first item. He will press a button which will ring a bell in the room in which the jury are assembled, and during the minute which follows, each member of the jury will write down what he or she receives. At the end of the minute, he will ring a bell twice. The engineers will switch over to the microphone in the separate room, and the members of the jury will give their results to listeners. The announcer in the separate room will then say, "We are switching over to the London studio for the next query," and the whole process will be repeated in a similar manner.
Five men and 4 women waited in the locked room of an old-fashioned house in the Bloomsbury section of London, on a night dank and dripping with fog a few weeks ago, while Sir Oliver Lodge, talking from the 2LO station of the British Broadcasting Corporation a mile away, explained to all of Great Britain the purpose and method of the greatest experiment in mass telepathy that has ever been attempted.
The directing of energy is far more important than the production of it. And it is only when energy is properly directed that it is useful. In the directing of energy, mind is at work.
At the Psychical Research Society's headquarters in Bloomsbury, there were coffee, sandwiches, and a bright fire. Conversation wandered from one to another of the ghostly experiments conducted from time to time in that locked room. The clip-clop of a horse cab sounded from the fog outside, and barred and shuttered windows, reminding Dr. V.J. Woolley, the Society's chief research worker, and his 8 companions, of how completely their communication with the outside world by any means was cut off.
The end aimed at is a mental impression, akin to the intention of the mind which initiated the plan. We live among phenomena which we get accustomed to much more than we understand them. It's really rather important to realize how little the physical aspect of these things is.
2 million listeners in throughout the British Isles suddenly became thinkers in. Sitting with their headphones clipped on them or in front of loudspeakers, they tried to gather thought vibrations from the locked room in Bloomsbury, where Dr. Woolley sat holding up his black card and 8 pairs of eyes stared at the 2 green clubs on it.
It must not be assumed that the experiment will have anything to do with spiritualism. Without doubting the importance of spiritualistic manifestations, it is not thought that the mechanical devices of wireless are at present of any assistance in communicating with souls departed.
Pencil and paper are needed for recording. If possible, use the record blanks in the back of the manual referred to above, or those sold in pads at bookstores. Do not carry out the tests under disturbing conditions. Have another person present to handle the cards and to record if this person does not distract your attention. If so, begin alone. However, 2 or more persons may take the tests together. The competition is stimulating for many, for others, not. Take the tests for ESP in a spirit of a game or an adventure. You may be gifted without knowing it. Many are surprised at the results they get. You need not believe you have ESP ability, but you do need to enter the tests wholeheartedly, trying to do well. The spirit of wanting to win the game is what helps most. Too much strain, however, is harmful.
Dr. Blank of Blink University has a license plate in the studio. He holds it in his hand behind a screen. He has just taken it from a locked box in which no one present could have seen it. He lays it down on the table. He alone is looking at it, and he alone will know what it is. On the sound of the bell, he will look at the first one of those odd numbers. Refresh your mind as to what the odd numbers are. Do not try to reason or guess. Try to use this newly found capacity for ESP. Relax and try to get from Dr. Blank's mind which odd number from 1 to 9 he is looking at when the bell rings. Do not take it too seriously. The less you strain, the more likely you are to succeed. Dr. Blank, are you ready? I am ready. Over in a special corner of the studio, behind a screen, seated at a table, is Dr. Blank of Blink University. He has before him a pack of the ESP cards made up of the 5 symbols: circle, cross, star, square, and waves. He is now shuffling the pack of cards thoroughly. When the bell rings, he will turn the pack up and look at the bottom card. For a few seconds after you hear the bell, wait for an impression to come out to you as these radio waves come out to you. An impression of the thought in Dr. Blank's mind. An impression of the symbol. One of those 5 which you now have written at the top of your page. Circle, cross, star, square, and waves.
Tests can be carried out in experiments between friends in different houses, streets, towns, or even countries. By previous agreement between agents, senders, and percipients, receivers, competitions can be arranged as follows. On the last striking note of Big Ben, or the last of the 6 dot seconds of the Greenwich time signal, the sender looks at a card, plain or coloured, for 1 minute. The receiver, in another house or town, during the same period, tries to visualise what card, suit, value, or colour the sender is looking at. Competitions amongst groups of friends, or between clubs, towns, or villages, can easily be arranged by means of the radio. One suggestion being that a person acts as sender to a number of his friends, who become the receivers. These can be in a group, or scattered all over the country.
We proceed as follows. Each day at 1 o'clock, an hour which suits the convenience of both of us, he sits at a table in his home and makes a drawing of some simple object, such as table fork, or an ink bottle, a duck, or a basket of fruit. Then he gazes steadily at his drawing while he concentrates his mind intently on visualizing the object before him. At my end of the wireless, I have done a different mental stunt. I have reclined on a couch with body completely relaxed and my mind in a dreamy, almost unconscious state, alternating with a state of gazing, with closed eyes into grey space, looking on this grey background for whatever picture or thought form may appear there. When a form appears, I record it at once. I reach for my pad and pencil and write down what I have seen and make a drawing of it, and then I relax again and look dreamily into space again to see if another vision will appear, or if this same one will return to assure me that it is the right one.
I cannot understand. I see red, something red, colors, a lady on one side. I do not know why I see a little bottle. We have a very fine cabinet, many old pictures, chairs upholstered in leather, with much wood in the room. The cabinet's a little dark. It is not the man that I have just seen, the stout one who has written the letter that I am holding. There is a drawing, made by a man who is not an artist. Something red with this bottle. There is without any doubt a second red envelope. There is a square drawn at the corner of the paper. The bottle is very badly drawn. I see it. I see it. I see it.
A message from Russia says that Professor Skripsky of the Leningrad Electrotechnical Institute announces the invention of an apparatus for catching and recording electromagnetic waves from the human body. Professor Skripsky says that with his device, it will be possible for scientists to find every individual's electrical characteristics. And he also says that electromagnetic waves emanate from all human beings, but vary according to the health, mood, and thoughts of the individual.
Аналогичный периодическим химическим реакциям при так называемом пульсирующем катализе Освальда, то мы должны признать, что вследствие этих реакций должна возникать периодическая электродвижущая сила, вызывающая в окружающей среде электромагнитные процессы, распространяющиеся скоростью света.
If we assume that the basis of this periodic activity is a periodic chemical process in cells, analogous to periodic chemical reactions in the so-called pulsating Oswald catalysis, then we must admit that as a result of these reactions, a periodic electromotive force should arise, causing environmental electromagnetic processes propagating at a speed of light from the place of their appearance in the ether.
Очень слабыми еще более ослабляться при прохождении через полупроводящие ткани. Потребуется ряд лет напряжения.
Formato da 6 pareti di legno foderate di latta bombata con nessune saldate in modo da escludere qualsiasi filtrazione d'aria, era collocata sopra un pavimento di abete isolato dal pavimento del locale con zoccoli di porcellana. Nell'interno della camera isolante, foderato di tela, si penetra da un'apertura praticata nella parte superiore. Speciali disposizioni permettono l'immissione e l'emissione di aria e l'introduzione di cibi. La suppellettile è costituita da un lettino, una tavola,
nach verschiedenen Typen konstruiert, aufgestellt. In dieses Zimmer führte er Nervenkranke aus seiner Klinik, deren Zustand eine Steigerung der Nerven- und Gehirntätigkeit begünstigte, so vor allem Epileptiker und leicht hypnotisierbare Nervöse. Am besten gelangen die Versuche bei einer Fräulein Maggie, die im Rufe einer hervorragenden Hellseherin stand. Verfiel sie in Trance, so wurden bei Benutzung solcher Detektoren, die für Wellenlängen zwischen 4 und 100 Meter berechnet waren, sofort im Kopfhörer deutliche Geräusche hörbar. Erwachte sie, so hörten die Geräusche auf. Sie wurden ebenso wie von Katzamani selbst
Если считать,
von
что
mehreren
основанием
seiner
этой
Assistenten
периодической
gehört
деятельности
und stellten
является
sich nicht
периодический
nur während der
химический процесс
Hypnose,
в
sondern
клетках,
vereinzelt auch in
аналогичный
Zuständen
периодическим химическим реакциям, при так называемом пульсирующем катализе Освальда, то мы должны признать, что вследствие этих реакций должна возникать периодическая электродвижущая сила, вызывающая в окружающей среде.
Thus, it may be possible to catch a thought in an external space in the form of electromagnetic wave. And this problem is one of the most interesting problems of biological physics.
Мы должны таким образом считать возможным уловить во внешнем пространстве мысль в виде электромагнитной волны, и эта задача является одной из интереснейших задач биологической физики. Конечно, нужно уже априори указать на огромные трудности
successives relatives à la télégraphie sans fil sont venues nous apporter des moyens bien plus délicats de déceler, selon l'heureuse expression d'Enrico Morselli, la radioactivité biopsychique humaine qui se manifeste en certaines conditions cérébrales. La SAREF a employé une méthode indirecte pour l'observation des courants périodiques engendrés par les centres nerveux en action et il a conclu à l'émission d'ondes électromagnétiques dont la longueur caractéristique serait de 3000 km. Ayant pris connaissance de ces travaux, je me suis décidé à tenter, avec une nouvelle orientation expérimentale, la recherche de ces ondes. Le cadre récepteur est orienté vers le sujet numéro 7 qui, aussitôt assis, tourne le visage vers le cadre et tombe en auto-hypnose. On entend alors au casque des bruits semblables à ceux des signes radio-télégraphiques qui se suspendent au réveil du sujet et qui reprennent partiellement à son entrée en hypnose. En provoquant des visions hallucinatoires dans le cas quantique, le bruit se redevient chahut une sonorité très particulière en rapport avec
mehreren seiner Assistenten und stellten sich nicht nur während der Hypnose, sondern vereinzelt auch in Zuständen
deze vrouw wonen. En hij beseft dat hij met een telepathische ervaring te doen heeft. Hij beseft dat er met die vrouw iets gaande is.
Нахождение этих, которые должны быть очень слабыми, еще более ослабляться при прохождении через... Conveying the process of thought in space gives certain grounds for explaining the phenomena of hypnosis, hypnotic suggestion and spiritualism. Теорию возбуждения. Передача процесса мысли в пространстве.
Hotel europejski. To nie pan pisał, to ktoś inny. Człowiek, którego mógłbym określić. List, który trzymam, jest zamknięty w kilku kopertach. To list i nie list zarazem. Widzę coś zielonkawego, z tektury. A to tamte listy białe z hotelu europejskiego. Widzę cudzoziemca w wieku lat 34-35, mało mówi, myślenie.
Telepathisch. En bij deze kennelijk auditieve vrouw zet deze langs telepathische weg ontvangen indruk zich om in een gehoorshallucinatie. Dat soort hallucinaties doet zich op alle zintuigelijke gebieden.
W liście znajduje się rysunek wykonany przez kogoś z artystą. Razem z tą butelką jest coś czerwonego. Przypuszczalnie trzecia koperta czerwona. W rogu arkusza jest wyrysowany kwadrat. Rysunek butelki wykonany bardzo nieumiejętnie. Widzę. Przed datą 1923 jest coś napisanego.
With subject number 7 in a state of hypnosis, noises similar to those of radio signals are heard with the headphones, which cease when the subject awakens and partially resume with her relapse into hypnosis. By provoking hallucinatory visions whilst in this state, the noise takes on a very special sonority in relation to the intensity of the suggested visions. The correlation between the hypnotic states of the subject and the sound reaction of the ear is evident. When the subject's hallucinatory visions are intense, whistles and modulated notes are heard in the headphones, similar to those of a muted violin. The noises, which also vary, including screeching, modulated and prolonged notes, etc., cease and resume, always in relation to the phases of the hypnotic state.
Dopodiché la conclude. La constatazione sperimentale diretta che il cervello, in date condizioni funzionali, produzione di fenomeni telepsichici, irraggia nell'etere delle oscillazioni elettromagnetiche del tipo radio-onde, a quanto mi risulta è la prima in questo ordine di
A paperweight.
A pencil.
Clock.
A book.
A spoon.
A cabbage.
A photograph. A bowl.
Scissors.
A walking stick.
An apple.
A glass of ale. Cigarettes.
Charlie Chaplin.
Concentrate. As a kid, you've got to really concentrate.
Okay. I'll do a different one. Okay. A button. A pen.
A hat.
Matches.
A thimble.
Flowers.
An apple.
Charlie Chaplin.
An orange.
Brooch.
Charlie
A
Chaplin.
penny.
A
Pipe.
A pipe.
A cat.
An umbrella.
A dog.
Maybe a walking stick rather than
an umbrella.
Bottle of perfume.
A walking
a pair of
stick.
spectacles.
A cat.
A book.
A
A ball.
A stone.
A stone.
Glass of ale.
An orange.
A pen.
Spoon.
A clock.
Bowl. An apple.
Matches.
Well, that was like the fourth go.
You got 2 out of 4 because you got the stone. Yeah.
No, the stone you were thinking.
I was going to pick this, it was in my head, and then I said, no, don't take something else.
All right. Now I'm going to try you.
Okay.
Okay. And I will send to you.
Charlie Chaplin. Leghorn chicken. A pencil. A watch.
A
pocket
bell.
knife. A penny. A fountain pen.
Cigarettes.
And
A book.
A book.
An
bottle
apple.
of
An
perfume.
A ball.
A
A
ball.
pair of
A
spectacles.
paperweight.
A
paperweight.
glass of ale.
A hat.
A hat.
A bottle of
A
ink.
stone. An
An
orange.
A cabbage.
A
A
cabbage.
doll.
A doll.
Flower pot. Vase.
Flower pot.
Flowers.
A vase.
Vase.
A pocket
A
knife.
flower
Flowers.
Pair of spectacles.
A clock.
A clock.
And
A pipe.
a paperweight.
A knife.
A
A
knife.
penny.
A glass of
A
ale.
spoon.
Scissors.
Scissors.
An umbrella. A glass. A bowl.
No,
A
no.
Walking stick.
An apple.
An apple.
A brooch.
A brooch.
Glass.
A
A
cat.
button.
A dog.
A cat.
A cat.
A button.
A chair.
A dog.
Cigarettes.
A chair.
A photograph.
Cigarettes.
Matches. A comb.
A photograph.
A fan.
Matches.
A bottle of
Photograph
ink.
of Charlie
A
Chaplin.
A
comb.
bell. A pair of
A fan.
spectacles.
An orange.
A thimble.
A bottle of ink.
A glass of ale.
A bell.
A bottle of
paperweight.
A
perfume.
pair of spectacles. A thimble. A glass of ale. A bottle of perfume.
Last Monday evening, 25 persons, under Dr. Murphy's direction, concentrated their minds on certain ideas and objects. We received thoughts here, and after similar transmission Monday, we shall check up on our results. On April 5th, by a prearranged plan, the sending of thoughts from Paris to Cambridge will be attempted. The transfer of thoughts over distances is not unknown, but little attempt has been made to carry out accurate tests.
Ether waves were used last night by 3 eminent psychologists in an attempt to transmit thought. The efforts were made at the Zenith Edgewater Beach radio station, WJAZ, by Professor Robert H. Galt of Northwestern University, Professor Gardner Murphy of Columbia University, and Professor H.B. English of Antioch College. Answers received today from the telepathy tests showed the thoughts of the scientists were projected into persons' minds miles away, it is assumed. Professor Galt asked his listeners to sit passively by for 3 minutes. During that time, each person was to write on a slip of paper a number or numbers which came into his mind. Professor Galt and his assistants, meanwhile, were thinking of a certain number and were trying to project that number to the radio audience. 11 other 3-minute tests followed. The professor announcing he was thinking of a wild animal, certain lines, a morsel of food, etc. I am undergoing a pain in one of my arms or hands, the experimenter enunciated into the microphone in one of the tests. Ouch! It hurts, continued the scientist. What hurts? What is the pain? Where is the pain?
Replies to the WJAZ broadcast came from the Black Belt of Chicago and from the Gold Coast. Society people in Lake Forest sent liveried chauffeurs with their answers so as to beat the deadline, while laboring men on the west side sent thumb-marked postals. And, out of this single, limited experiment, one remarkable telepathic subject revealed herself. How many may be discovered in a nationwide effort with today's radio audience is too startling for even a guess.
Why, when he was talking, it felt just as if somebody was pinching my own hand.
Of the 2,500 persons who took part in that experiment, more than 300 got the impression of a lion. It so happened that the machine had chosen a walrus. Not a single individual reported a walrus, and only 2 reported seals. It is clear that if the machine had chosen a lion, the results would have looked like telepathy. As it was, the results were below the figure to be expected from sheer chance.
Radio listeners all over the country were asked to concentrate their minds on 6 items which were announced to them from the London studio. In a room at the Savoy Hotel was a distinguished jury of 7, and this jury were asked to try and receive the items on which listeners were concentrating.
Charlie Chaplin,
Leghorn chicken,
a pencil,
a
watch,
a pocket
knife,
a penny,
a fountain
pen, a book, an apple, a ball,
a paperweight.
In no case were the jury successful.
From Station Director to Mr. Lewis. Mass telepathy on Wednesday, October the 28th at 10:30 p.m. I was away when this mass telepathy was started. Do you remember how exactly it arose? I should like to have some full statement to put before the Managing Director.
There is nothing in the little that is known about telepathy, and hardly more in what has been claimed for it, to indicate that this mode of conveying intelligence ever will develop into a serious rival of the radio, the telegraph, or even the mails.
There were 816 references to the recent visit of the Duke and Duchess of York to Australia. 208 people saw portraits of the King, and 1 saw Queen Alexandra in her coronation robes. The Labour government, the drought, and the flight of Lindbergh were frequently mentioned. Some of the participants quite missed the point of the test. Instead of confining their thoughts to 5 objects on a table, they seemed to think they were undergoing something supernatural. Several became frightened and said they felt weak and trembling.
Between radio communication and that from mind to mind without the use of words in some understandable way, there is and will be no real similarity. And the fact that radio does things that not long ago would have been called impossible is not a reason or even an excuse for saying that telepathy will be the next step into the unknown.
I have here indicated what will be the work of the 20th century. To complete the theory of the ether and show how all things lead to an intelligible and concrete reality, very different from the abstractions and confusions under which we now for the time labor. Yet the present is a phase through which we had to go. It is an intermediate era in physics, through which we are guided by great men.
Evidence so far uncovered is in few respects conclusive. Is extrasensory perception, for example, some phenomenon of that band of frequencies above or below the tiny fraction of the spectrum which we now know well enough to use consciously, or perhaps the black gap between radio and light? Many students advanced the idea that it may be something of this sort, something in the nature of a personalized radio transmission from one person's mind into the mind of another.
The mails will all be parcel post. There won't be any phones when mind communication is perfected. For distance interviews, it will be possible to use it with not one "please excuse it" interjected. And editors won't need to write with writhings and with groans. They'll only have to sit and smoke and ponder in placid meditations on affairs of states and nations, and let their cerebrations simply wander.
The question as to whether telepathy has any real analogy with wireless radio is one that must remain, for some time at least, unanswered.
For all we know to the contrary, the human soul may spread through a vast orbit around the body and may intermingle with other incarnate or discarnate souls. Tennyson speaks of dream condition, when the mortal limit of the self is loosed and passed into the nameless as the clouds melt into heaven. Moreover, the intimacy and immediacy of the union between the soul and God is the fundamental idea not only of the New Testament, but of all great Christian thinkers.
Is my mind a hodgepodge of its own thoughts and the silent, ever-changing thoughts of all other creatures, just as my body is a hodgepodge of the elements of the plants and animals and light rays it is fed on and made of?
I met people who heard sounds in the sky. I knew them personally. People looked at them dismissively as abnormal, as almost insane. And here, many years later, a human genius gives us a radio capable of reproducing not only sounds and melodies, words, etc., vibrating in the present moment, but also, as some people think, the sounds which passed away hundreds of years ago and are now coming from unknown times. Already today, human genius is working to create such devices that you can see objects at great distances.
Już dziś geniusz ludzki pracuje nad stworzeniem takich przyrządów, by za ich pomocą można było widzieć na odległość.
I am convinced that soon a moment will come when human genius will begin to recreate by the power of the greatest inspiration taken from the depths of the spirit through some sensitive instrument, astral experiences of humankind.
And the whole of physics will become once more luminous and clear, constituting a glorious epoch for our descent. The ether will come into its own again, not only for practical purposes, as the seat of all potential energy, but with a clear understanding of it as the one substance that holds the universe together, in which all matter is embedded without which even locomotion cannot be properly understood, and which constitutes the physical vehicle for life and mind.
If I see such instrument, then it definitely exists, then some more sensitive will appear, an objective one, or some appropriate receiving apparatus, through which everyone will be able to see the entire history of nations, the life of Christ, and many other great moments of the past life of mankind, beyond time and space.
A heart that beats in all its pulses with the common heart of humankind, which the same things make glad, the same make sorry.
I'm just a radio receiving set, which picks up the thoughts of all the other creatures of this universe. Mental Radio was created by Alexander Kolkowski and Kit Price. It was commissioned by the Media of Mediumship project, funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. The creators of Mental Radio are also presenting a sound installation, the Laboratory of Psychical Research, at Senate House in London from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day from the 13th to the 16th of November 2021, with performances each day at 4:30 p.m. Search Senate House Library events to book and follow at Media of Mediumship on social media for other related events. Mental Radio features material from the Duke Parapsychology Laboratory Archives, Box 30, held at the David M. Rubenstein Rare Book and Manuscript Library, Duke University. We also used memos held in the BBC Written Archives, file R19/1272 Telepathy. Our grateful thanks to Sally Rhine Feather, the Rhine Research Centre, the David M. Rubenstein Library and the BBC Written Archives for permission to use this material. We are also grateful to Wim Kramer and colleagues at Het Johan Borgman Fonds in the Netherlands for providing a recording of WHC 10/2. Other sources in Mental Radio include the discography of American historical recordings, national and regional newspapers from the UK and the United States, and writings and recordings by Harry Price, Stefan Osowiecki, Oliver Lodge, Gardner Murphy, J.B. Rhine, Mary Craig Sinclair, Ferdinando Katzamali, Richard Berwald, and Lazarev Petr Petrovich. Mental Radio was brought to life through the voices of Sandra Binion, Luciano Cesa, Nicholas Collins, Melissa Van Dree, David Duff, Angela Dunstan, Christine Ferguson, Eugene Giddens, Alfred Hyatt, Vitaly Kamluk, Alexander Kolkowski, Michal Libera, Lou Malozzi, Glyn Perrin, Kit Price, Danienne Simone, Quentin Skinner, and Andreas Sommer. Our thanks to all who assisted us in sourcing and recording these materials. You can listen to Mental Radio again on the Media of Mediumship website at mediaofmediumship.stir.ac.uk.